southeast corner, basically. And I'm not so confident yet that the story's all going Cameron's way. I think solidity and I think judgment. And by that I mean, if people feel that...
But do you think you're being a bit complacent there, of course? I mean, of course, you've got more numbers in terms of, majority in Parliament, but, you never know. The charisma of David Cameron may outshine.
But if the charisma of David Cameron is going to put people out of work, send interest rates up to 17% again overnight, they're now at 5%, and we're talking about huge interest rate rises at 0.5% at the present time, the economy counts for a massive factor. And when I go around the doors, and I'm an old-fashioned politician, I knock on the doors, I'm not meeting this great... People are saying to me, what are the media going on about? They're not there, and they're not saying to me we hate Labour. There are real worries about Iraq and the internationalist foreign policy.
But do you think you're going to ride on a successful economy into the next victory? Is that what you're saying?
I think that managing the economy is a massive factor, but we've also, and I've already said, we have to address the new challenges as well. And that is, where will the jobs of the future come from? I think that's the biggest question of all. If the Chinese and Indians take all our jobs, what do we do? Where will we go? And that's what the kids are asking now. Leeds University, I'll give you an example, has expanded from 12,000 students in the 70s when I went there to 50,000 students now. Over half are overseas students. That's a massive amount. A fifth of the students next year will be from China. And they'll all come out graduates. China and India, between them, are bringing out more PhDs than everyone else. So it isn't the small bit jobs, it's the bright intelligence-led jobs. Now, that is a mega challenge to Little Britain, basically.
Right.
And we have to address that challenge if we're to have a stable economic future. I'm pretty sure Gordon Brown's focused on that question. But you're right, go back to Miliband, he needs a young team around him. And what he doesn't need to do is have, big, a kind of upheaval, I'll only appoint my... bright, new, sparky personalities in, and that will be his test as a leader.
That'll be his challenge. Of course, viewers, let me once again come back to the original question. John Battle, of course, being the Prime Minister envoy, also is a Member of Parliament for Leeds. Leeds, as you know, is the constituency or the area from which the so-called or allegedly the bombers came from. And, I'm going to ask John about how the community has dealt with in the aftermath. Whatever happened, obviously, it's something that one can only condemn. But when you come to the situation in the aftermath, how are you coping with the aftermath? How are you building better relations so that no more young people have to turn to this last resort?
I mean, I'm not... There are murders in Leeds and people get shot, I have to say. Not that often, but it does happen. So people kill each other. That's the reality of the world. So I'm not complacent to say that we'll not have any more terror bombers again, ever, or that people won't get desperate, kill other people.
What have you learned, though, from the experience that you've had?
What I've learned from it is that...
You and the community in Leeds, in general.
Yeah, well, again, that communities have to knit together, and people have to be a bit more open, and we've not to leave people isolated and left behind. And I think it is part of this question of identity, and I think people have to learn, including people like me, all of us. You asked me earlier on, who's to blame for the loss of identity? People have complicated identities now. People live in a complicated world, a very complicated world. Young people have to deal with more information and more bits of information from more bits of the world than ever before, process it in their heads and remain a human being and love their neighbours as a result of it. I think that's a massive challenge. So we have to build neighbour relations at the local level.
What I gather from that is that you are really putting it onto the community to get together. Some people may argue that it is up to the authorities, the government, the Member of Parliament. People have elected you to build perhaps better relationships. You have a role as a special envoy for interfaith matters. What would you do?
Well, I'd say to you, come and move into my street and live with me. I go home every week. I've never moved from my street as a neighbour and as a minister. I go home every week. So what do? We get out on the street and look after each other. Care of the elderly, care of the sick, care of the kids in our neighbourhood. Know your neighbours. Don't watch Neighbours in Australia and know more about what's going on in Ramsey Street, and more people do in Britain, than know the name of their own neighbour. Going to a school, and I remember saying to a kid, Neighbours, what's Neighbours? And all the kids in the class told me about what goes on the soap opera in Australia. I then said to a little girl of 9, and who lives next door to you? She said, I don't know. What's that got to do with Neighbours? That's the problem in Britain, this isolation of people. I spend a lot of my
isolation,
time,
obviously,
a lot of my time as an MP, dragging people out of their homes, not quite as harshly as that, and introducing people to them in groups in neighbourhoods to build community. But I do believe you build it from the bottom up. You don't do it from an edict from the top down. You can't pass a government law and say, be neighbours, be good neighbours.
Building better community relations, of course, is key to better understanding of each other's cultures, particularly in a country like Britain, where people are coming and living, of course, not just from in the past, those have immigrated historically, but even currently, people moving in from all sorts of places and obviously learning to live together.
27 nationalities in my street. And
27 nationalities, there you go.
26 languages in my own street.
26 languages in his own street. There you go. That tells you the multiculturalism that Britain has. And we hope that through discussions like this and discussions at community levels in Parliament, better community relations can be developed. Thank you very much, John Battle, the Prime Minister's envoy on interfaith matters, Member of Parliament for Leeds, for joining me and answering some of my questions.
Great pleasure.
Until next time, this is me, Javed Malik, saying Allah Hafiz.